Many people, especially from the older generation, are reaching retirement with little or no pensions. How serious is this problem?
I think it's like 1 in 3 that don't have private pensions. The closer you get to that target, the more money you need to accumulate and pump into this machine. The hurdles that I tend to see a lot when I'm speaking to our parents' age, their generation, is the idea that they've been in a property that they've owned for multiple years and they are still on an interest-only mortgage. I remember speaking to a client and having this kind of conversation with them and realizing that they still had 250 grand on the property outstanding.
Oh my God.
And the conversation was more around, 1, did you know this was there? And 2, what was your plan?
When you hear retirement, what's the first thing that comes to your mind for you personally?
The idea of retirement is starting to change. There's a lot more freedom around what you want to do.
How have you seen people use RSUs to build wealth?
Some clients I know have used it to buy their properties.
RSUs?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's crazy. If that same 27-year-old wanted to retire even earlier than 47, what would they need to do differently? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Atto. We have a special guest in the building, a repeat guest. We have Michael, who's a certified financial planner and financial advisor with over a decade of experience in the financial services industry. How are you doing, bro? How you doing, Michael?
I'm good. It's been a while.
It's been a while, man. Yeah, it's good to see you. But we've been chatting anyway, like offline
as always.
well. Yeah. We've been catching up.
Yeah.
And so you've had a few changes as well, right?
Yeah,
recently.
yeah.
Do you want to talk about some of the changes that you've had?
I've been moving around in terms of practice. So, looking to kind of build for myself, kind of build out my own brand and my own business as a financial planner, and just kind of focusing more on the, financial planning, the lifestyle financial planning, which is, effectively the holistic planning that I was talking about in the last episode, but just putting more emphasis on it and just kind of, putting a spin on it the way I want to help my clients. Yeah.
How have you found that change for you? Like, how have you had any challenges and how are you overcoming those challenges?
Yeah, no, it's always a challenge when you move around, because if you move into another network or another practice, then you have to get used to the kind of philosophy of how they approach the business, maybe the different routines that they have in place in terms of like admin, compliance. So you almost start from scratch a little bit when you make that transition. So it's not something I'd always recommend, but when it happens, you got to kind of just go with the flow and kind of find the quickest way to catch on to how you need to kind of operate for yourself.
Yeah. So technically it's like you are still entrepreneur, right? So it's like a continuation of that, but there's like a little bit of disruption that you have to kind of like...
Yeah, definitely. Most, a large portion of financial advisors or financial planners are self-employed.
I don't know if people knew that,
Yeah, I think potentially, I think there is this kind of idea that I guess it depends who you're working with, but you're probably right. I don't think a lot of people know that a large portion of advisors are self-employed, and then they may be going to a network or going to a practice, or setting up by themselves, which means that they have, what they're dealing with, and then they have the firm that they're connected to, and having to kind of marry the two together.
Yeah. I was thinking about your journey last time, and people should definitely go and listen to the previous episode. You definitely worked at Barclays, right? Is that off the top of my head?
No, I was HSBC.
Okay, so you worked in HSBC.
But I was in the bank, but that was like my early journey into finance. So that was after leaving university, and kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And I ended up going into one of the branches. East London, and off the back of that, that's where I kind of learned about my kind of interacting with people, meet and greet, personal banking, credit cards, loans, bank accounts, insurance, and then ultimately into kind of like supervising and working alongside a financial advisor. So that was kind of like my entry level into what financial advice looked like. Yeah.
Nice, man. You definitely got the 360 and you're on both sides, because obviously you're working in banking. Yeah. And then now you're like doing financial advisory, which is like very useful. Yeah. I was wondering again, like through your journey, was there a single moment in your journey, a conversation, a realization where you thought wealth is possible for me?
Yeah, I think there was maybe two instances. It was, I talk about the advisor that I was working with at HSBC at the time, and kind of seeing the work that he was doing with the clients there, and I guess seeing the business that he was doing, that kind of brought me into the idea of actually like, this could be something I could do and I can make some money off it. And also I can help people as well. So it kind of felt like there was the best of both worlds in my eyes. Like I can, find a career that I can make money off and be successful, and I can also help people at the same time. So that was my first kind of instance of that. And then I guess the second one was when I went into stockbroking after that. And I think that's when I started to make some good money, but then also start to see the opportunity of what I could potentially do with that money. But I think the one thing I was missing was someone like me. At that time, I was still quite young, mid-20s. I didn't have much. I didn't have somebody there that was able to kind of guide me and say, hey, Mike, you've got this money here. You should be doing this with this money. You should be putting it into this investment. You should be tapping into this. I had, similar guys around me, testosterone, everybody running around, trading, recommending shares to their clients. And then when the market was closing, we'll go down to the pub and get the rounds and, one party to the next. And it was just a constant rotation of, make money, spend money, make it back.
Yeah. Okay. Like work hard, play hard type of lifestyle.
Yeah, we played really hard. Yeah. We played really hard. We worked harder, but that's what it was. And like I said, if I had somebody like myself, an advisor that was able to kind of put the arm around my shoulder and say, look, these are the things that you could be doing with your money. And it sounds weird because I was working in finance. Yeah. So sometimes you would think that somebody that's working in finance also has this mentality, but you will see it a lot of times, people in different roles, portfolio managers, research analysts, even, other senior execs. Sure, they're working in this space, but when you're kind of looking at your own personal finance, sometimes there's a blind spot there. Yeah. You don't even realize it.
100%. I've had this conversation with a few people on the podcast, and even me, like working in financial services, I'm working at an accountancy firm. Yeah. Right? Nah. Yeah. We don't talk about money. We did not talk about personal money. We'll talk about clients, how to help clients. And from that perspective, and we had big clients, we had investment bankers and all that, but we didn't really, it was never a conversation of, okay, so Atto, about your personal finance, have you done your budget for the month? Have you saved here? Have you invested in this?
I think it's just, you always assume it's going to be there.
Yeah.
So you're almost in the headspace of like, I don't need to think about it now. So you never really take time out of your day to sit down and go, okay, what does my finance actually look like? Yeah. What should it look like? What do I want it to look like? You're very much just kind of going with the flow, going with the rhythm. And again, back then it was kind of like, well, I'll make, 5, 10, 15 grand and then, I'll make it back again the next month. So in my head, I was kind of like, well, there wasn't anybody kind of directing me to say, well, sure, you can save, but what about if you do this with it? What about if you tap into this area? What about if you look at alternative investments? What about if you look into property at this level, commercial property, all these other things that you could be doing? Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that a lot of people that make bare money just have that inclination to just spend a lot of it because of what you're saying, innit? Because they're just thinking, I'm going to make that next month. Yeah. So a lot of people don't think that's how it works, but a lot of people do that, right? In that kind of way. They, we talk about this mindset a lot, but people who can't manage money at the lower levels, let's say you're making like, I don't know, you're getting like $2,000 a month, and let's say that is supposed to be enough for you to get money after that. Somebody who struggles to do that thinks that if I get 5, 6, 7, surely I'll be good.
Yeah. But I don't think it's about the number. I think it's about the habits. And I think this is where sometimes people don't tend to look at the habits that they are dealing with and how that kind of portrays in their spending. So, I do some financial coaching with some clients. And when looking at the coaching, we're thinking more about the numbers. We're looking more about the expenses. We're looking more around your spending habits and your, I guess your relationship with your finances, how you perceive your finances, how you think about money. What does money mean to you? Because people grow up in a different environment, kind of thinking about money. For me, growing up was in an environment as the middle child, kind of like hoarding stuff a little bit.
Okay.
So if I had money, I was kind of like, oh, let me just hold it for, I don't know, for whatever reason.
Why was that?
I don't know. I guess it was a little bit of, I always felt like I had an older brother who used to take stuff from me.
Okay.
So I'm like, let me keep this. But then there was always this feeling there. It was like, I wanted to just maybe have some funds there just in case. So if I got pocket money, I wouldn't spend it as much. Yeah, I'd just be holding it, kind of waiting for something to happen for me to want to spend it. But then again, there wasn't anybody there say, well, if you have that, you should be investing it, or you should be doing this with it.
Okay, so you just stored money.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of people do tend to do that. I think nowadays there's a slight difference, because now people are starting to realize that they should be doing something with their money. And they're at the ages now where they're starting to think, well, if I had I done it 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I could have made this. Yeah. And some of it is because of social media. Some of it is, the Bitcoins of the world, and, some of the Nvidias and the big shares that have been jumping up, that's encouraging people to look back and go, oh my gosh, had I invested in this a couple of years ago, this could have made the difference. And now they're kind of not rushing, but they're like, okay, I need to do something now.
I want to move on to this, because I'm really interested in this. I know you've had a lot of client conversations, and you've had a lot of interesting insights. Is there a moment you can recall when a client story completely changed the way you think about wealth, success, and happiness?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's always a good and a bad story in these kind of scenarios. And I think last time I talked about a kind of lowest, bad story, in the sense of I had a client that, and this is kind of what made me think about how I wanted to approach my financial planning as well. I had a client that was at retirement, so hit 65, been working as a lorry driver for 35 years, needed some help with his pension, not a big deal, but managed to help him with a few things, and we built a good relationship, just staying in touch regularly. And he got to a point where he hadn't planned out his retirement. So at the point that he got his state pension, and they gave him the handshake and was like, you're off on your own now. He didn't really know what to do with himself. And, I was constantly speaking to him about, hey, why didn't you go on holiday? Why didn't you go do this? Why didn't you go and do this? But he was so kind of just stuck in his ways of how he used to live. He couldn't really see that far ahead to think what else he can do. And, within kind of like 8-9 months, he passed away. And I guess that hit me from a wealth perspective was, you can't take it with you, obviously, but, all that time that he was just working just to get to this point, and they didn't get to enjoy it as much. So that kind of instilled in me this kind of focus and mantra of, planning for tomorrow, but living for today, which I think is important. I think that trying to find the balance is important. And then on the positive side, I've definitely seen clients that have kind of taken my advice, and they've been able to save thousands of pounds off the back of that, and put themselves in a good position to the point where they've maybe got some money back from their tax, or they've maybe increased their savings or investments more than they would have anticipated. And now we're having a conversation around, what do I do with this money? And now with that kind of mentality, there's more of a balance between, okay, let's put some away to continue building your plan, but let's enjoy some of it.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay, so you talk to them about enjoying it.
I think it's important. I think it's important. You're working hard for it. Work hard, play hard, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So I think you definitely need to have the balance. Yeah,
It's important to have the balance of not just working so hard that, like you say, that you don't enjoy life, right? Because at the end of the day, I feel like people forget what you work to enjoy life.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think people work, unless you really enjoy work, which is okay too. I think if work is fun for you, then it makes sense. But in that situation, for most people, it's not. People just work to do their thing.
The other side of the coin as well.
Yeah.
You know, you see Gary Vee talk about it a lot. Like, you know, if you don't like your job, it's easy to say as well. It's like,
he's
you
in a
don't like
privileged
your job,
place. I want to hear it from somebody who's not in a privileged
place.
But
I understand to some extent, because a lot of the time when I'm speaking to some clients or potential clients, and they're coming to me to ask about, I'm trying to make passive income, or I'm trying to earn X amount a year as quick as possible. When we go through the analysis of what they're trying to address, sometimes the real question is, do you like your job?
Mic drop. Do you like your job?
Because sometimes what they're really trying to do is just move from a situation they're not comfortable with anymore.
100%, yeah.
But they're thinking their exit is, I must find this, this passive income, or this golden ticket that's going to get me out of this, without thinking about the reality of, what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And whether it creates a new problem, or they just, what they're going to do with their time. Because they might want to do something else. Yeah. So the real question might just be, should you just find another job that you get to do, that you like, that you get paid for, while still building your wealth?
I would say that's what people should do, because it takes a while to get to wherever you need to get to anyway, right? Even business, it takes a bit of time.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Definitely. So
do you like your job?
No, but you know what I mean? Because sometimes I don't think people actually really sit down and think about it. You know what I mean?
Coming home hating your job. But a lot of people hate their jobs.
You know what
That's
I mean?
true.
Monday morning comes, they're hitting the beds, they're punching the walls, they don't want to leave the house. They're working from home, they're still stressed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But and I think right now there's a lot more of that. I think there's a lot more frustration that people are dealing with, or not dealing with, and they haven't actually sat down and really identified if that is one of the problems. And if there is isn't, cool, then maybe you need to find a way to work within that, and let's manage things. Or sure, if you've got some capacity to do some other stuff, maybe find second income or side hustle or something, then cool, let's look into that. But sometimes the question does need to be had. You need to ask it.
It's true. But I know in this market it's tough for people to move, because obviously it's a mad market, right? So I can understand why people might be staying for real.
Don't just leave your jobs. I'm not saying that, but ask yourself the question.
Have a plan, innit? Have a plan to what you're gonna try and do. I know you mentioned the pension story in the previous episode actually as well, right? That pension one, it's so interesting that you said that, because I think I remember speaking to somebody on a podcast and say that sometimes, I think it was on a podcast, sometimes people grieve their jobs because it's like, I might have read, it's either I spoke to somebody on a podcast or read it. People grieve their job because for a lot of people, that's their identity. That's your identity. 35, 40 years. And it's like, it's no different to a footballer. A lot of footballers struggle after football because they don't know, okay, this is what I'm known for. This is what's my bread and butter. This is what's made me money. This is what's given me this lifestyle. I'm no longer required to do football. What do I do?
Well, yeah, because even if you look at their careers, it's much shorter.
It's short.
And what they usually do is they accumulate all this wealth in a very short period of time. And then they maintain a lifestyle alongside that wealth that they've built. So whatever salary they've accumulated, or how much money they're earning, and then it just shuts down. And I don't know if they've had the conversation with someone to say, okay, what next? How are you supposed to maintain this? Do you know what I mean? And the grieving part of maybe I got injured and I had to retire earlier than I anticipated, or this is all I know. What do I do next?
You're grieving that was your old life,
Yes,
right?
yes.
That you loved, let's say.
And I think this is where, retirement is key, the conversation, because, retirement probably is about a new life, about thinking about what the next journey could look like for you. Almost looking at it as a new career, potentially.
You have to. Yeah. Otherwise, like, I think you'll really struggle, because a lot of people want to achieve financial freedom. They, they want to do all this kind of thing. But the truth of the matter is, let's say you want to reach financial freedom, you quit your job. Like you say, that is a new life. You're now doing something else. You've got to fill the time with something. What is that something that you're filling the time with? And if you don't fill the time with something, that's when you become... That's where you'll grieve. That's where I don't want to like just state that people become depressed, but I can understand why people become depressed if they've got no purpose any longer, right? Yeah. Nothing. Okay, what am I waking up for? What am I doing here? And that's the other side that I think a lot of people want to reach retirement, but they don't think about that in that conversation. And I think it's a very important conversation to have, because I was thinking about, I had this conversation on somebody's podcast recently, and we were talking about like, will we ever be content? Like, will we ever stop working? And I just said, truly, I think if you're an ambitious person, I think it's very hard to just be like, I'm going to stop. I've tried. No, not like that, but like, even on holiday or anything, I'm just, it's hard. Like, after a while, you're just trying to, like, you got to fill your time with something, right? I think it's important. I don't know, like, people in the audience, let us know like what you think about that, because I think nobody's ever really thought about the grieving aspect of you and your identity and who you are, right?
I think it's, and I think this is why sometimes it is important to have that kind of conversation and plan ahead, because like you said, you can potentially lose your identity in the role that you were.
That's you. That's who
been
you are.
you.
Yeah,
this whole time. You've been driving that lorry for 35 years. You've been working in that office job for 20 odd years. You've been working in that bank for all this time, and then you just stop. Go cold turkey. Effectively, it's like that's a lot.
Like you say, it's a new life. I like that. I like the way you said that, because it's true. You doing something else, you achieving financial freedom, early retirement, retiring is a new life that you have to mentally get yourself around as well. So anyway, talking about retirement, right? So many people, especially from the older generation, are reaching retirement with little or no pension savings. How serious is this problem, and what are the consequences of not starting contributions early? We talked about this. We talked about, like, especially in our community, the pension talk. I very rarely have had a pension conversation with the older generation in my community, if I'm being very honest with you.
I think it's like 1 in 3 that don't have private pensions a lot of the time. And, private pension may be a pension that you set up yourself, or may even be a pension that you maybe acquired through work. Ultimately, once you stopped working there, moved somewhere else. And what that means is, a lot of these retired individuals are having to rely on their state pension. And the state pension, right now is about £230 a week.
In this cost of living crisis, where Aldi and Lidl is basically Sainsbury's prices, and the Sainsbury's and Asda and now Waitrose prices.
It's all going up. So if you think about that, if you're not setting yourself up for that kind of longer term plan, that retirement plan, what is that going to look like for you? We've seen recently, the backlash with the winter fuel prices, and that being cut and having to be reinstated, because it was actually impacting people's well-being. Because they don't have enough money to maintain, and they're having to choose between putting the heat on or eating, and that's a crazy thing for people to have to go through.
It's crazy.
But then also the question is, what plan was there? Did they have a plan in place? For some people, could have been a unforeseen circumstance, maybe a divorce or something drastic might have impacted them. But for a lot of people, they haven't thought that far ahead to go, actually, what does my retirement look like? What would I want it to look like?
That's the thing, man. It's like, it's such a, it's one of those conversations. I know people don't want to have it. I get it. but I think it's like, okay, the current generation, the older generation, I'm not sure what they can kind of do, but we're going to talk about a couple of things, like maybe potential solutions for them. Have you noticed like cultural differences, especially when conversations around retirement? Have you noticed like certain cultures are more advocates for it versus others? And, you know,
when we're talking about retirement, one thing I've noticed is a lot of people in our community, in terms of like the Black community, they just haven't had this education early enough. So one of the hurdles that I tend to see a lot when I'm speaking to kind of like our parents' age, their generation, is the idea that they've been in the property that they've owned for multiple years, 20 odd years or so, and they are still on an interest-only mortgage.
Yeah, which is mad. Yeah,
which means that they still have a principal amount that they need to pay at a particular time. So technically, they don't fully own that property until they pay it off. Now, this could be, I remember speaking to a client and having this kind of conversation with them and realizing that they still had like 250 grand on the property outstanding.
Oh my God.
And the conversation was more around, well, one, did you know this was there? And two, what was your plan? Because if they didn't have the money to pay that off, then the next conversation might be around having to sell the place to help fund their retirement. But now we're in another problem. Where do they live? Where do they go? They've been in this house 20 or 25 years, 30 years. And now, because they wasn't either aware or they hadn't planned ahead, they're now stuck in this position. And it's not entirely their fault, because back in the day, a lot of the banks were offering these interest-only loans with the endowment policies.
Okay.
And
what's the endowment, if you can quickly explain
endowment
that?
Policies were these insurance policies that were tied to your interest-only mortgage. Okay. So the whole premise of them was that they would grow in line with your mortgage, so that when they get to retirement, they would kind of offset it and they would pay off the difference.
Okay, so then so a person will get an endowment policy.
Yeah, back in the day.
It'll grow, and then they would get money from the endowment.
And it would pay off the principal amount.
Okay.
And then this is where the original PPI kicked in.
Okay.
Which meant that some of these policies were deemed, they were missold. Okay. Right. Some people were left in a position where they either cancelled those policies or, you know, they maybe surrendered them early.
What?
So,
that's crazy.
So yeah, you know, with that, you got a lot of people that are kind of sitting in the house and not even realizing that they still have a certain amount of money to pay.
That's wild.
And this is what's interesting, is because if you think about it, this is where also the dynamic of, you know, the older generation being able to afford property compared to like what property prices looks like now. And, you know, part of the reason is because of the mortgages that they
interest
have.
Only. Yeah. Okay.
So the affordability was completely different.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. You know what? Nobody's actually ever really highlighted that, actually, and I never really knew that about the endowment policies. That's very wild. So what you're seeing in terms of like, even like in the communities, that definitely like education's lacking, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So hopefully today we can, you know, help people. Let's see what we can do. Let's see. We'll try our best, right? Definitely. For you though, I want to know, right? When you hear retirement, right? What's the first thing that comes to your mind for you personally?
I guess the words choice, options, flexibility. I keep the words freedom keeps coming back to me.
Yeah.
But it's probably because I've heard a lot of clients say financial freedom. So
that's what we love.
Yeah. They love financial freedom, which I get. But yeah, I think retirement, the idea of retirement, is starting to change when speaking to younger clients. A lot of my clients are kind of in the mid-30s, early 40s, and kind of still accumulating wealth. So the conversations that we're having is a lot around, you know, what do you want your retirement to look like? You know, what choices do you want to have? You know, what options do you want to have? You know, where do you want to live?
Yeah.
You know, what country do you want to be in? You know, so I think there's a lot more freedom around what you want to do. And it's starting to sound a bit more exciting to people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. Yeah. And it's true. I think the term retirement is really, it's like, I don't want to say it's got a negative connotation, but it's got a certain kind of, when you think about it, you might think somebody old, somebody's like, I don't know, maybe you think it's somebody chilling on a beach, but retirement could be anything. Retirement could even be you, I could say maybe working on something you really love, but maybe it's not as intensive as like a normal 9-to-5 job. Maybe it's like a couple hours I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple hours a week, right? So that could be retirement.
Yeah.
You could say you're semi-retired. So, because I've spoken to some people that say they're semi-retired, but they're still working. But it's like a couple hours, 3-4 is paying things for them. So I want to go into talking about pensions.
Yeah.
So we're gonna the way we're gonna structure this is we're thinking about not only retiring pension but retiring with other things. And I've got a few interesting other questions that we haven't really covered on the podcast. So just make sure to stay to the end for that. What age do you think people should ideally start seriously contributing to a pension, and why?
Honestly, as soon as possible. So if we're talking age, you know, as soon as you start working.
Yeah.
The reason being is because the most powerful tool in this whole combination is the time. You know, when we're talking about compound interest, we're talking about time. Okay. But we're also talking about, so I was doing a talk at a tech firm, and I was talking to some of the professionals there about, you know, the consequences of not investing for your retirement plans, and the idea of, you know, someone in their 30s looking to retire at 60, so 30 years, and based on like a 6-7% growth rate over that time compounded, and for them to reach £1 million, so just £1 million, I say just, but you know, £1 million in 30 years. They started at 30, they would have to put in about, I think it was about £800, £800 to £900 a month to make those contributions. If they started at 40, it would now turn into about £1,900 to make the same amount of contributions, or not same amount of contributions, the contributions with the same growth rate, but now less time. We've got 20 years instead of 30 years. If they waited to 50, they'd have to put in about £5,600 a month.
5,000?
Yeah. Wow. If they needed to make £1 million, make those contributions based on a 7% growth rate.
Crazy.
So the closer you get to that target, the more money you need to accumulate and pump into this machine, this vehicle, to build up this retirement pot. So the time is quite valuable. I was speaking to somebody else about junior pensions.
Yeah.
So you can set up a pension for a child. And if you were to put in money into a pension for a child, you can, once they're here, you can start contributing. So the conversation was around 3 to 18. And you start contributing. You can actually contribute up to $3,600 a year into a junior pension, which actually includes tax relief as well.
Okay. Oh, that's nice.
Which means that you can put about 2,880 in there and gross up to 3,600. Now, if you were to do that, you know, not everyone's going to have the capacity to do that, but if you were to grow that money fully every year up into 18, you'd probably have about £56,000 in there. Okay. If you were to let that money compound up into, say, 60, 65, you'd have about 1.2 mil.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you can, okay, so this is the key to how to make your child a millionaire. honestly, this is the thing about
Yeah.
time and giving the money time to grow. And this is also the thing about education and why education is so important and why people just got to get on top of this. When you're speaking to your clients about this, right? Like, I feel like people feel nervous. They look at it and like, oh, I don't understand it. How do you simplify this for people that are listening right now, that where they're like, they can just be a bit more comfortable just doing this a little bit more?
And when you say doing it, do you mean the investments? Or?
Yeah, investment. Because I think just the whole end to end, really, like even first, let's say, even just setting up, right, a pension, like setting it up. Because actually these days, I mean, signing up is goes without saying. We don't have to tell them how to do that. That's your details. But like simplifying, even like how do you choose? Because that's the stumbling block. I'm pretty sure they'll sign up. They'll see. They're like, okay, I'm done.
Well, look,
I'm out here.
I think the education piece is key, and there's so much to pick from. You know, global markets, S&P 500, FTSE 100, all that kind of stuff. You know, what I've started to do with my kids, for example, and I might have talked about this a little bit in the last episode, but I started to ask them about the stuff that they like to play with, the stuff that they like to engage with on a, you know, they're at the ages 9 and 12 where they're doing the YouTube constantly, Fortnite, all this kind of stuff. So, you know, I spoke to my son, for example, and asked him, you know, what is he into? And he said, he's into Fortnite, he's into Spider-Man. And we went down this rabbit hole of looking at Spider-Man. I think they're owned by Insomnia. I think the company, the games, Insomnia Games. Sony Games are owned by Sony. And I was like, okay, well then, wouldn't it be nice for you to maybe own a part of this game?
Okay.
And he was like, what do you mean? I said, well, if you were to buy shares in Sony, technically you would be a shareholder in the company. You would be a shareholder in Insomnia. Okay. So when they perform well, you perform well.
Okay. So you're talking to, so align it around the interests. I like that.
Yeah. Because I think the problem is naturally you want to get a client into investing the right way in terms of like diversification, but there's still that stumbling block of trying to understand what that actually looks like, what that investment looks like, what the FTSE 100 is, what the S&P 500 is, what does the CAC 40 or the DAX 30, what do these things actually mean? But if you get a client or individual to look at something that they're already interested in, and they start looking at it from an investment perspective, they will start to maybe go down a bit more of a rabbit hole of understanding why that company is doing well or why that company's not doing well. So even when I'm speaking to my clients about their RSUs, for example, so their shares that they get from their company, you know, a lot of the time I would tell them, like, you work for this company, so you have a better understanding of what this company is going to do than I do. Which means, you know, there's a conversation to be had there in terms of if there's a reason for you to hold or keep some of them, then why? Because there may be something that you're familiar with, not to say like inside information, but you might have a better understanding of what this company is doing, seeing the future, the vision of this company, for you to say, actually, this is why I like the idea of having some of these shares. Because you're in the mix. Now, it doesn't mean that you should hold all of them, but you have a good understanding of what's going on there. It's similar to the child that is, you know, playing the Fortnite and those kind of games. They may not maybe know exactly how to research a company, but they might have more, look, this is happening next. This is coming up next. We've got this event happening, all this kind of stuff. And similar to the average adult that might be interested in fashion and thinking about ASOS or, you know, thinking about Tesco's or, you know, thinking about Vodafone or, do you know what I mean? It could vary depending on, you know, what your interests are. And I think that could be a good way to start investing and then kind of start branching off into the ETFs and the diversified funds.
Okay, so it's about so it sounds like definitely aligning around your interests. So obviously you mentioned S&P 500. A lot of people like global ETF.
Yeah.
I think most people on my channel love up a global ETF and index fund. Yeah, I don't think they're interested in S&P 500. Yeah.
Oh, really? When did that change?
I think it's been like that. Because we had a comment from one of my guests about S&P 500.
Yeah.
Over global. Yeah, they were not having
That's
it.
interesting.
They were not having it.
I wonder what encouraged that. You know,
probably me. It's probably my fault. I talked a lot about it. No, you know what? I just think people have just. I don't know actually what it is, because you do speak to a lot of other people and they do say S&P 500. A lot of people do mention that is more known for sure. I think S&P 500 is very well known. Yeah. But yeah. So do you think it makes sense to have for people to still look at those diversified, the global ETFs, index funds, the S&P 500?
Definitely.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think diversification is key because the whole premise around it is to reduce risk in your investment effectively. What you're trying to do is have some kind of mixed correlation. Where one goes up, one goes down, one offsets the other effectively. Or, where one industry is not doing well, another industry can offset that. So diversification is key. And, if you're just in the S&P 500, how diversified are you? Because you're tied to one nation. Yeah,
America.
On the flip side, it's the S&P 500 historically is doing 9-10% a year. So there's always a argument around whether you should or whether you shouldn't.
Yeah, that's true.
But when we're seeing stuff like what's going on now in the world, where we're seeing wars in the US kind of getting involved in some of these crises, and where tariffs coming in place and share prices is going up and down, it's being quite volatile, then the conversation is, should I be exposed into this one area? And it's the same thing with company shares as well. Should I be exposed into this one company? So when I was talking about buying individual shares, it was more from an understanding of what it looks like and what it feels like to buy and invest into companies. But once you get comfortable with the idea of investing, then you should be looking at diversifying.
Okay. I get it. Okay, cool. No. Cool. Thank you. I've got a scenario for you. So I'm going to use this same person throughout the different stages for us to
what's the name?
Right? The name. What's the name? Oh my God.
You got to give them a name. I got a friend Temmie. You can use Temmie, but...
We'll use the name Temmie. Let's use the name Temmie.
Shout out Temmie.
So this is Temmie. They're 27. They're earning 40k, £40,000, and but they have 10,000 in an existing pension. Let's say, how much would they need to contribute each month to retire at 57 with a decent income? So that 57 is when I'm hearing that's when it's changing to in terms of being able to withdraw.
Yeah. It will change. So that's the normal kind of pension age in terms of when you can pull money out. It's usually 10 years prior to your state pension. So state pension right now is around 66 and it was around 65. 10 years prior to your state pension, you should be in the position to start drawing on your personal pension. Now for Temmie, and this is where the financial planning piece comes into play, because the real conversation is around how much does he want to have when he retires. Because if we were just talking about the average retirement is anywhere between kind of like 18 to 30,000 a year, depending on single or couples. For maybe an individual or couple in the UK. But if Temmie is in his 20s and he's trying to live a lavish lifestyle, or he wants to enjoy, going on the beach or going on holiday or going back home and coming back to the UK, then the real question is, how much should his retirement cost? So we're now in a position to understand how much money he should be putting towards that. If we were to put, I don't know, £250 away, for example, over a 30-year period, at around 6-7%, that could probably amount to maybe $500,000,
Okay.
if not more. The real question is, would that be enough?
Yeah.
So now, the real conversation is around what is the end goal, so that we can understand what we should be working towards that.
Okay. Okay, cool. And then how do you figure out what the end goal is? Because a lot of people, that's going to be their question.
You know, this is where the financial planning piece comes into play, because for me, it's all about what kind of lifestyle you're trying to live.
Yeah.
You know, what are you trying to do at that time? What hobbies are you into? What kind of changing, you know, kind of activities do you want to do? Do you want to move into gardening? Do you want to, I don't know, start doing, you know, bungee jumping? Do you want to just travel the world and do all these different activities? Do you want to work in a charity? You know, there's so many different things that you may want to do. Do you want to go live in another country? So trying to understand what that retirement number looks like is understanding what you want your lifestyle to look like. You know, some people will maybe use like a rule of thumb, or say like 20 to 25 years as a multiple of a fixed number that they're looking to retire on. But I think that number is key, because that number is actually different for everybody.
Okay.
That number that they're trying to live off at retirement age.
Okay. So let's say, so you said 25 to what? 20 times 25?
20 to 25 times.
Okay. So if you wanted to live on 10,000 a year, then you times a rough number.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, you can use a calculator, but a rough number potentially.
Yeah.
Not financial advice, people. It could be 20 to 25 times that 10K.
Yeah. And I guess the only reason why you can look at it from that perspective is because, you know, if we're talking, I don't know, 60, retiring at 60 or so, you know, the life expectancy for men is around 79. I think for women it's about 84. So we're assuming that this is enough money to carry on to, you know, when you get to that kind of age.
Okay. So 20 years worth of money. Yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah, that is the assumption.
20 to 25
yeah,
years. Yeah.
But you know, as someone that is doing this on a day-to-day basis, I'm always kind of thinking about the what ifs, and thinking about what if there was more time for you to live and more time to enjoy, and more opportunities for you to kind of explore the world and, you know, enjoy more experiences as well. So that number can range. I've seen that number range from as low as 20,000 a year to as high as 120,000 a year.
Okay. Is it? I don't want this to come across like as a mean question. I'm not meaning to be like that. I just want to just ask it, right? Is there an age where it no longer makes sense to contribute to a pension?
Technically, from the age of 75, you no longer get any tax relief on your contributions.
Okay.
So when you contribute into a pension, the whole benefit of utilizing your pension is you receive tax relief. So you get to claim some of that money back. Once you get to 75, you no longer have the opportunity to receive tax relief on that pension money. So you could assume that at that point, there may be no reason, but that's not the only reason you would put money into a pension. Naturally, you want the money to grow tax-free. At the moment, it is kind of free of inheritance tax, but that might change in the future. And you don't want to be touching your money all the time. You don't want to be making knee-jerk reactions. You don't want to be, you know, kind of pulling money out. You want to find a way to commit to this plan. And this is what the pension is doing. It's kind of forcing you to commit to the plan.
Okay. So 75. But aside from that, prior to that, it makes sense to still...
Yeah, definitely.
You think so? Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, so why is that? Why should people still... What's the importance of the pension? What's like the pros of it? Pros and cons of having it?
You know, a lot of people like the numbers. So let's just look at the numbers. You know, if you wanted £100 to go to your pension, it would only need you to put £80 in there. So when you put £80 in, it would gross up to 100. Okay. Now, if we were to look at that from an investment perspective, that's a 25% increase.
Yeah.
Now, which investments do people regularly get 25% increase?
That's true. Okay.
Just by putting their money into the pot.
Right. Okay. I get it.
And if we go even further and you're looking at someone that is, and that's a 20% tax relief. You know, if we're looking at someone that is a 40% taxpayer or 45% taxpayer, we're now in a position where putting £100 into a pension may only cost them £60.
Okay.
Because they're able to claim some of that tax back. So we're now in a position where, you know, that £60 has turned into £100, and that is an increase of about 66%.
Yeah.
So the real question is, why aren't you doing it? If you are interested in returns and generating a significant amount of money from your savings, if you want your money to work harder, then why aren't you putting your money into a pension?
Because we want to retire. You don't want to retire.
Fire your movement.
Oh, like, yeah, but that's what we're saying, right?
Yeah,
we don't want to retire early. We want to, we want to retire early. So actually that moves me on to my next area, right? For people who want to retire a bit earlier, then, the private pension age of, I think we said roughly around 57, right?
Yeah.
So if people did want to start investing, what's then the ideal time for them to be able to like retire before? Like, when should they start? Is it again as early as possible?
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be because, again, you never know what might happen throughout that journey, what hiccups could arise. We've seen interest rates increase and mortgage rates were going through the roof. And, a lot of people are selling their properties. I don't think that was in their plan.
Yeah,
I don't think there was a lot of people that are anticipating that they're going to have to sell their properties, or their mortgage has now jumped to such a significant level that maybe they can't even save now. So you never know what the future is going to look like. So if you're in a position to put that money into your, not just your pension, but into your investments, you should be aiming to prioritize some of that now as much as you can.
Yeah.
And the sooner you start, I think the easier it will be for you, because you almost want it to be part of your routine.
Yeah.
Just like it's part of your routine to pay for the gym, just like it's part of your routine to,
that's true.
Pay for your travel to go to work, or buy that extra coffee. For some people, it's not part of their routine to invest. And if they haven't exercised that muscle, now encourage them to do it at such a later stage in life is a completely
tough.
Yeah.
Have you tried to have that conversation with older people? What are they saying about that?
Well, I guess it depends on what their experience has been with their finances. If they've, you think for some people, they've gone through how many financial crises?
Yeah, a few maybe,
3 or 4 financial crises, and they've seen the markets do this constantly. And in their head, they're like, well, if I just kept my money in cash, so my money's always been there, so why would I want to put in the stock market? Yeah. But if you look at the performance of the stock market, even that the FTSE 100 the last 35 to 40 years, the average growth has been about 6.8, 7.2%, 7% on average. So even if you were to compare that to somebody holding their money in cash, they would have well increased their money significantly more than someone holding their cash. So the real question at those later stages is what would that actually look like for them to start making those transitions and investing? Because if we don't have a significant amount of time to reap the benefits of it, then is it a risk that we need to be taking right now?
Yeah, that's true. So what would you say are then the pros and cons of looking at the stock market as a vehicle for you to retire earlier than utilizing your pension, or let's say retiring earlier than 50?
Well, again, you have the opportunity to invest in a global market that is constantly growing, constantly shifting in terms of industries that are performing well, and you have an opportunity to allow that money to beat inflation. So you want to maximize that. Now, when people talk about passive income as well, the reality is, if you do put enough money into the stock market and into either companies or certain funds, some of them could be income distributing funds, which means that they could pay out an income for you as well. One thing that people always talk about is how Warren Buffett, from a dividends perspective, is receiving dividends more than the CEO of Coca-Cola is earning in the company.
Probably
because of how much money he has in the shares, effectively.
That's crazy.
So again, obviously we're talking about someone that has been investing for a long period of time, but this is where the real benefit of having that money in the stock market can be for you as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going back to Temi, right?
Yeah.
So Temi now is like, bun the pension thing. That's what they say.
Yep.
They're like, I told Michael, want to retire earlier.
Yeah.
We want to retire at 47.
Yeah.
Not trying to retire at 57, right?
He's like, screw this, I can't wait.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If that same 27-year-old wanted to retire even earlier than 47, wanted to retire even earlier, let's say around 47, what would they need to do differently if they want to retire earlier than, again, like in their 50s?
They would need to have a much higher savings capacity.
Okay.
So we're talking about, the general rule tends to be around like 15 to 20% savings. When we're talking about kind of retiring early, they're going to have to sacrifice a lot of their lifestyle now to make sure that they put enough money away for that retirement stage if they want to retire early. So we're now talking about what are they willing to forego now?
Yeah.
What are they willing to not have? When you talk about the FIRE movement, they usually talk about people saving like 85% of their income to put that money away towards that early retirement. Now, what does that mean? That might mean you can't go to the restaurant. That might mean you can't go on holiday. That might mean you can't go to that all-day party.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that you might have to give up. It might even mean that you can't raise a family.
Yeah. That's crazy, though.
So again, it depends on what you're trying to do and what your circumstances look like. Because there may be so many things that you have to forego to get to those targets. And the question is, how important is it for you to do that to be able to reach that goal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you had that conversation with people where they're like, oh, we want to retire early? What's that conversation like with even like more recent conversations? Because I'm sure a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, I want to retire early. What's that conversation around that where you're telling them, oh, you have to like sacrifice?
Well, I think, again, the conversation kind of stems around the numbers at first, because ultimately what I'm trying to identify is it realistic based on the numbers that they give me? If they say, hey, I want to live on 100,000 a year and I got 20 years to do it, or 15 years to do it, and they're on like 60,000 a year or 40,000 a year, is it realistic? Are the numbers realistic?
Yeah.
And if it isn't, what alternatives do they need to make? What changes do they need to make? Do they need to pivot? Do they need to get a job with a higher income? Do they need to start a business? Do they need to consider some other form of investing? Maybe try to build a property portfolio or kind of leveraging off the back of that. So it's about checking if it's a realistic kind of setting for them when they're talking about the retirement that they're trying to make early.
Yeah. So is all about like the kind of realistic setting. And are people surprised when you tell them your 100,000 goal is not looking likely? Are they more surprised, or is it like a case of, okay, you need to work harder, or you need to find money from somewhere?
I think they are more surprised. I think they're more surprised at I think they're more surprised at the idea that when I'm kind of presenting this to them as this is what you might need to do, they're almost looking at me like yeah, but you're supposed to pull a rabbit out of your hat and give us the answer and solve the problem. And we should be able to just do this. And sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes it is about, do you have the capacity to build up the funds for that target, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
But we're only talking about what they have, not essentially what they don't have. So the conversation might now stem around what they could accumulate through other means. Maybe they are at a particular income, and now the conversation might be around, can they double their income?
Yeah.
so that they can reach that target.
Okay.
But
so that's the kind of conversation we'll have.
Well, it's just as important to kind of look at what they're currently doing and what they could be doing to see if that can potentially help reach their goals.
Okay.
Because sometimes the idea is assuming that everything that they're doing right now is enough to reach that target. But, you know, if we sit down and we build the financial plan, it might not be enough.
Okay.
We might have a better idea of, okay, well, maybe if you went from 40 to 60, or if you went from 60 to 100, that might actually get you to the goal.
Yeah. And this is the thing, this is what people need to be thinking about. Because, you know, when people are thinking about the 60 to the 100 or the 100, 120, they're not thinking about investing more. They're thinking about how can they spend more. How can I get the bigger house? How can I go to more luxury? That's what their motivation is to. Their motivation isn't to make more, to retire early. When I think about it, because even me, I'm thinking that my programming isn't thinking, okay, I need to make. Actually, no, mine now is. I lie. I tell a lie. No, I am now thinking that. But back in the days, I was not thinking. I was thinking more to, you know.
But like you said, I think, you know, the mentality has been kind of, you know, once you earn more, you spend more effectively. And I think, you know, in those kind of conversations, you know, that discussion is around if we are able to increase your income, or we are able to increase the money that's coming into the household, can we use that to help, you know, build your plan and achieve those goals that you're trying to achieve? So, you know, the dynamics have changed a little bit. And I think people are a bit more open to the idea of that, especially younger people, because they're not always just thinking about once they're ready to have that conversation with an advisor, I think they're not thinking necessarily about if they make more money, they're going to be, you know, happy
putting
to
away,
to spend constantly and all that kind of stuff. They are now at that stage where they're thinking a bit more strategically about where they want their money to go.
Early. Okay, I like that. This is what it's about, man. It's all about that. And obviously, we talked already about investing, but pretty much like even investing in the stock market, would you say the approach should be the same kind of approach in terms of, we talked about pensions, but investing in the stock market, do you think it's like when people are thinking about doing that, especially if they want to retire earlier, how should they approach that?
In pensions or?
No, just invest in stock market outside. Again, we're talking about like retiring earlier.
Yeah, I think they just need to be aggressive.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they just need to be aggressive. I think they need to, if they want to really, you know, give themselves an opportunity to consider that option of retire early, they really need to be on top of how much is going into the stock market, where that money is going, and what's happening with any dividends, how is that money being reinvested, and how consistent are they with that in their portfolio as well.
So that's what you mean about aggressive. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
That's what you mean about aggressive. So it's about just understanding where your money is going, make sure that you're reinvesting. So aggressive in terms of like, it sounds like being militant. Like being militant in what your goal is, like being militant in terms of, like you say, reinvesting your dividends into the same companies that you're getting your dividends from, right? And things like that. Okay. I appreciate that. I wanted to move on. Actually, you mentioned it before, stock options, right? Can you explain what that is? Because we've not talked about that on the podcast, right? And share an example of how one of your clients has successfully used that to build wealth. So you said stock option, RSUs,
Yeah, so they vary a little bit, but RSUs, restricted stock units, are, you know, effectively shares that are issued to you as part of your pay package. So in a lot of these tech companies, you get maybe a salary, but you get shares that'll be issued to you over a period of time.
Yeah.
So you're now in a position to have access to these shares for the period of time that you stay at the company. And once you have access to them, which is usually called the vesting period, when they vest and they become live, you're now in a position to decide if you want to sell those shares or hold on to those shares. So they're a good incentive from a company's perspective to encourage employee to be with the company for a period of time. It's a good opportunity for the employee to have some skin in the game, as they say, or have some exposure to the company and either grow that money in that company or take that money and invest it somewhere else. Now, when it comes to stock options are a little bit different, because stock options give you the right to effectively buy those shares. Doesn't effectively mean that you own those shares straight away. Okay. So with stock options, what usually happens is they will give you the option to buy those shares
within your company. So
within your company,
at
a particular price, which they would usually call like the exercise price or strike price. And then at a later date, you can decide whether you want to buy those shares. So until you make that decision, you don't actually own them.
Okay. So there is like an offer. So
it's like an offer. Yeah.
I can't remember where it was recently, but for instance, let's say it's Google. Google say, okay, I don't know, I can't remember the price of Google right now, but let's say actually it's about $140, $150, I think. But let's say like if somebody was working at Google might be like, okay, we'll give you a stock option where you can buy one share for $100 or something like that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and then you would decide if you want to exercise them. It's usually up until a fixed date. So you'd have to either wait till that date comes or maybe prior to that date, you'd have to decide if you want to exercise that option and have ownership of those shares. Until then, you don't actually own them.
Okay, yeah. Right. And which one are you seeing more commonly with like the clients in this, like RSUs or stock options?
I guess a lot more companies, especially in the tech space, usually distribute RSUs, so the restricted stock units. But some companies will offer stock options, and I think it varies depending on the company structure, maybe their tax structure, maybe where they are, their head office is residing, stuff like that, and how they want to distribute their pay to their client, to their employees. Yeah.
And how have you seen people use RSUs to build wealth? I'm actually, you just reminded me, as you were talking about it, you just remind me of a little thing that I'll say after. I want to hear this answer, and I'm going to say something. It's a personal story of mine. It's not a big story, but
I think, some clients I know have used it to buy their properties.
Wow. RSUs?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Been able to maybe put a deposit down to buy their property, so stuff like that.
That's insane.
Some clients have been in a position to hold on to their RSUs over time, and it's accumulated to significant levels, which means that they have quite a large exposure to one company, which isn't always, could be a double-edged sword, effectively. But then there's been opportunities to maybe use that money to invest in their business as well. Maybe a business that they want to kind of grow outside of the company, or they end up leaving the company and they still have these shares, and they're now using them as kind of startup capital for their own businesses as well.
Yeah. Wow. You know what? When you say that, that's actually so true, because there's a lot of like so many, like ex-Google, ex-Meta, so there's a guy, Chamath in the US that I specifically remember him mentioning that like he was early in Facebook and stuff like that.
Yes.
And now he's balling, he's like, investing in other businesses and stuff, and he's in that whole industry. I believe it's a lot of that startup for him was him being involved in Meta, and then you get a lot of people like ex-Google and stuff like that. And so you can really see the power of it. Yeah. With that, it's amazing that people are able to do that, but a lot of people don't know that. And I know there's a few people that I know that target that, that will join startups and things like that, so that they can get what you're saying, RSUs, right? think if the company has a lot of potential,
Yes.
maybe they IPO something
Yeah,
like that, and then
yeah.
they boom,
Yeah.
their net wealth explodes.
I mean, we saw that with like Nvidia
Exactly.
as well. You know, some employees that have been there for quite some time that had shares, and the share price kind of skyrocketed, and some of them, were doing really well.
Exactly.
And also, I think it depends on, like you said, with some of the startups, like how early you are in the company, because we're now talking about how significant that growth is, effectively.
Exactly.
So it's going to vary depending on when you've entered the company as well.
Yeah, it's not going to always be profitable all the time. If the company goes bust, you ain't getting nothing.
Well,
right?
There are some companies out there that will distribute shares or RSUs to their employees, but then their share price hasn't been performing consistently over time, so they're having to wait to really reap the benefits of it as well. So again, a lot of this is about what might be the best option to leverage these investments. And also you have to bear in mind that there's tax implications.
Okay, talk to me about the tax.
So with RSUs, with these, they have a withholding tax. So when they are vested to you, they have a form of income tax.
Oh, really? You have to pay income tax on it?
Yeah. Your voice is wet.
Damn.
Yeah, there's a withholding tax that they would kind of keep some of the shares back to account for that tax.
Oh, really?
In most cases. But then on the double-edged sword, when you now own the shares after they vested and you're now in a position to sell them, they could be liable for capital gains tax as well.
Is it?
Yeah.
So wait, income tax and capital gain?
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah. These lot are, wow.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, they don't play. And it's a similar thing with stock options, but it's slightly different, because with the stock options, it's more based on the exercise price, so the price that they exercise, and the market price.
Okay.
And that difference may have some form of income tax potentially, and capital gains tax. So again, they give with one hand, they take with another.
You have to taxing everything.
Yeah. So
crazy.
It's, as much as it's important to speak to someone like myself about it, it's also important to have a tax accountant and have an accountant that you can speak to identify what that could look like for you as well. So even when I'm speaking to my clients or speaking to people about it, I'm always making sure that anything we do or anything we look at, go back to an accountant or a tax advisor about that as well.
That is crazy. Yeah. So my personal story that I was going to mention about RSU, I think it was an RSU. Anyway, what I got given was I got given shares at a company I was working at, right? In my previously, like I was working at this company, off the top of my head, I think from 2016 to about 2018. I obviously mean not being somebody who was into personal finance at that point, really that journey, or not into investing, should I say. I was on my journey, but I wasn't into investing, didn't understand anything about investing. They gave me shares. Some of my colleagues had shares. I was like, I still have the shares still to this day, and I still get dividends, but it's nothing. It's like pennies. But it just makes me think, like, back, if I had invested, because I think they even gave us a few stock options. Now that you mention it, I think they gave us the ability to buy at a lower price as well. I didn't take advantage of it, is whatever. But they gave me those shares for free. You know, it was not like I didn't have to pay for it and stuff like that. So it's so interesting that you say that, because like if I had known that back then, I could have built a significant dividend, which I'm now getting paid. I get a letter like I get the annual shareholder meeting stuff. I get this is what your dividend is. So now they pay it directly into my account as well. It's not a lot of people. I'm not they're not rich from it. But it just shows you the power of this kind of stuff, and like why it's important to have an understanding and the benefits that you might be missing out on, especially like you work for a company, you don't even realize, oh my God, like you've got this stuff. People, like you say, people that have been there for 15, 20 years, they could be sitting on a gold mine right now, missing out on,
Well, look, I think it's just, again, it's understanding what you have access to. And then understanding what is like important for you and your family, and what are you trying to work towards effectively. as well.
So property, I want to wrap up this. Obviously, we talked about retiring with pension, retiring with the stock market, property, right?
Yep.
How can people use property, whether it's their own home or an investment, to support their retirement plans?
Well, most cases, property is usually used in maybe two forms. It's probably about maybe three, but one would be rental income, naturally. So if you're in a position to have more than one property, or even the properties that you're in, you may be in a position to rent out a room, which, you know, you can, I think you can rent out a room for about £7,500 a year tax free. Or you may have an additional property which you may be able to generate rental income from, and that can potentially be something that you can use. A lot of people tend to say, oh, their property is going to be their retirement. The other option would be maybe downsizing, which tends to happen at times where people are, from what I've seen, usually forced to downsize so that they can use that money to fund their retirement as well. And I think the real question is, like, was that part of the plan? Yeah. You know, because it could be a good way to kind of store your money, store that wealth, and then, you know, kind of release that money. But then you also have to think about, you know, when you need the money, will you be able to sell at that point?
Yeah, that's true.
As well. And what would that actually look like? Yeah. Do you need to, you know, sell below market price because nobody's buying, or no one's in a position to buy because the price is inflated? Now we're seeing house prices go up so much and people are having to put significant deposits down. You know, we're talking 20-25% deposits. Obviously, they're now starting to bring into place, like, you know, 10%, even 5%, even 100% mortgages now.
That's crazy. They're bringing those back, yeah?
Yeah.
That's mad. So obviously I talked about this stuff individually, but truly it makes sense for you to combine it all. That's the most powerful thing, right? To have it all, not just one. It's about having a pension, it's about having investment stock market, it's about having the property, right? So what does a balanced retirement plan look like in 2025 using a mix of all three options?
Well, I think having the property is more of a personal choice.
Okay.
Because people always just think about the rental income, or whatever kind of reward you're going to get from it, but they don't always think about the maintenance of the property, any additional costs, ongoing costs that they have to account for. So I think it's a personal preference if you want it part of your portfolio. But over the long run, you know, property prices are usually assumed to go up. So there's always an idea to have that part of your balanced retirement plan. But ultimately, you know, the real question is, how are you able to get some money out of these investments? How are you able to draw the right amount of money out of these investments? And when you do take the money out of these investments, how much tax do you have to pay? Yeah. And that's also something you have to bear in mind, because even rental income at retirement age will still be taxable income. So, you know, you could have 5-10 properties, which is great. And, you know, that could work in your favor. You still have to pay tax on that. If that's going to be enough for you to retire, then happy days. But then you also have to deal with the maintenance. And if you're comfortable with that, then that's fine. But if you're someone that's not that way inclined, then the real question is, do you need to go through that stress? Does it make sense to just, you know, build up your money into your pension or your ISA or into your investment account and grow that money? And then you have this money that you can pull from without having to worry about some of those other
like
problems as well.
Yeah. So maybe like the properties where like you live in retirement. Yeah. And then like your pensions and stocks and shares ISA, because that's more like tax efficient. You're not having to worry about like tax, like you say, right? Because you're right, even with like a rental, you just don't know what tax implications is going to happen and what kind of they'll say around that in the future. You just don't know. You can never really predict.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're only going off what we know now.
Yeah, exactly.
So even as an advisor, I'm advising based on the laws and what's going on now. You know, those laws and those rules can change, and as they change, you know, we will have to change what the advice might look like for each individual. And for each individual, the circumstances are different. So that's why it's not always easy to answer some of these questions, because you know, for everybody that is trying to go through this, they have their own agenda, they have their own priorities, and they have their own kind of goals that they're trying to work towards.
Okay, cool. Thank you, bro. Thank you. It's been a great conversation with you. Obviously, we're doing What's in a Wallet. So this is a new segment of the podcast. When we spoke last time, we weren't doing this. We're doing this now. And I encourage people to send in questions, because, you know, this is your opportunity to send in questions. People have so many questions in the comments, but when I ask them to send in questions, they're getting shy. Don't get shy. Just send in the question. And I already said it doesn't have to be like money related. It can be anything. Well, of course, nothing crazy, but we'll try and get the guests to answer as much as possible. I'm going to be repeating this question because I've got another question, but it's a business one, so I'll leave that for business guests. But I've got this money question, and actually I thought it would be interesting to repeat it to you as well. So you've won 100,000 on premium bonds. Okay, I'll say that again. You have won 100,000 on premium bonds. What are you doing with it?
100,000 premium bonds. So, you know, I would put away some of it for a rainy day, maybe like 20K, something like that. I would maybe invest another maybe 30K in the stock market or in the pension. And then I guess it depends on how I'm inclined, but if I had a business idea, I would be looking to invest that money into a business.
So the other 50 is going into business?
Yeah, I think I would be.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you're a risk taker like that?
Well, I think in this day and age, you probably have to be thinking about taking some element of risk.
I like that.
You know, if the business idea makes sense. So if it's something,
but it's your business idea.
Well, yeah, naturally. But I think you know, if you want to build something of your own that you can kind of grow over time, having some money into a business can be of benefit to you, as well as kind of putting your money into your retirement pot. But again, it depends on, you know, if you're that way inclined. I'm self-employed, so for me, I'm always kind of thinking about growing my business, for example, as a financial advisor. If I was maybe working in a full-time role, and I had a consistent income that was coming in, and I was like, well, I know I can save X amount every year, and I know that would reach me to the goal. Then the question would be, well, why do I need to take that much risk?
Fair enough.
So I think it's about where you are in your situation and what makes sense.
Okay, cool. Thanks, bro. If anybody wants questions, you know, to be answered, what's in your wallet? Link in the description. So make sure to submit your questions anonymously. I think I've said this before, no emails or sign up required. It's easy. You go onto the website, you submit it comes to me, I answer it. So just keep it simple. Thanks so much for answering that. How do you see your work evolving in the next few years, and where can people find you?
Well, you can always find me on LinkedIn, Michael G. Doncor. You can find me on Instagram, Mike G. Doncor. You can check my website as well. In terms of, you know, evolution, I think a lot of this is about building out my brand and building out my community and helping as many people as possible kind of save money, kind of grow their finances, and, you know, giving them the opportunity to make sure that they're planning for tomorrow and living for today. So just getting the right balance.
Thank you. Appreciate that, bro. Like I said, you shared so many insights, especially the stock options and RSUs, because we've never really spoken about that on the podcast. And I think it's always good to like get new insights into how people can, build wealth. But obviously they've also got to be thinking about tax as well. So this is important.
Taxman's always there.
Taxman's always there.
Yeah. But look, as long as you have the conversation with somebody that has a good understanding of what you're dealing with, hopefully they can give you some direction, and they can give you the right advice that is tailored to what you're trying to achieve, your goals, what you're trying to do.
Exactly. Really appreciate you featuring for the second time on the pod, bro. Really appreciate your time. Do you have any final words for the watchers and listeners?
Just start. Don't overthink it. Start small. Start building, and just be willing to consider taking some element of risk. In your investments. If you can't keep it all in cash, and also find time to enjoy a little bit as well. Find time to find the right balance. Spend time with family. Take care of your health, but make sure that you are kind of looking to invest over time.
Amazing. Thank you so much, bro. Really appreciate those final words. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the podcast. See you next week's episode.